Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of my podcast, They're Not Mine. This is a podcast series about life with kids through the eyes of an auntie, me. Okay, a couple of points I just want to make a note of before we dive into the episode. First of all, you probably can hear from my accent. I'm an Australian, but I've actually been living in California for over a decade now. So I know I'm going to use Aussie terms. So for my American friends, see if you can work out what I'm saying, but I will try to be mindful and ensure nothing's lost in translation. The second thing is we have done some amazing animation with this podcast. So if you're listening, I would really encourage you to go check it out on my They're Not Mine YouTube channel or any other social platform that supports video. Okay, so in the vein of any serialized TV show and my love for efficiency, I'm just going to do a quick previously on recap so we can get a sense of where the story's at so far. My sister Trina's had a baby, gorgeous baby girl, Annie Grace. It is the first grandchild for our family. She was born with slightly larger feet, a bit like her auntie, particularly for a newborn, and I'm going to actually get to teach her things. So, on with the story. You see, it was quite a few months after Annie was born, and I pulled into a petrol station, aka gas station, at Carryong, just north of Gosford. And this was the agreed meeting place for the drop. It was interesting. People were pulling out after filling up their cars and giving me curious glances like, what's that woman doing? Is she waiting for somebody? Is she looking for directions? Is it an illicit deal? Now, don't get me wrong. I was waiting for something of value. But this wasn't some kind of Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta, Pulp Fiction kind of a drop. I wasn't waiting for a briefcase. I was waiting for a baby. See, a few weeks after Annie was born, Trina phoned me. And man, I could hear the tears and the exhaustion in her voice as soon as she started to speak. And just like the first time Trina phoned me, without hesitation, I said, I'll be there. I'm coming. I'm leaving work now. About an hour and a half later, I arrived at Trina's. And with her knowing Annie was safe, she retreated to have that long-awaited shower and climb into bed. I whisked up Annie, and now I was officially on night duty. You know, I'm amazed. I can sleep through a thunderstorm. And here I was in the bedroom next to the nursery, and it must have been around 2 a.m., and I hear the baby squawk. And I'm up, I'm awake. And I know they talk about mothers having a sixth sense or parents having a sixth sense. Maybe it's something that aunties have as well. But anyway, I did not want to let the team down. So I scooped up Annie before anything escalated to louder than a cry and straight into the kitchen to make her bottle. Now, I can remember before Trina and Brett retreated to bed for the evening, and the instructions were very clear. Feed her a bottle, burp her, and then change her nappy, diaper. Then straight to bed. Do not stimulate her. Do not talk to her, Tanya. I thought, yep, I can follow those instructions. So the only light I'm working with is the light that's shining from the microwave as I'm heating up her bottle. Eventually, I'm in the living room and I'm feeding her. And my eyes are starting to acclimatise to the darkness, and there's a bit of moonlight coming through the window. And I'm thinking, don't look at her, Tanya, don't look at her. And then at one stage, I glance down. And her eyes are wide open. She's staring right up at me. And I'm thinking, don't talk to her. You've been given the writing instructions. And then I eventually thought, to hell with it. What's Trina and Brett ever going to know? What's this 6-week-old kid going to throw me under a bus and dob me in? Hell no. So I started to talk to her. I started to talk to her about work, started to talk to her about the guy I was going out with that really wasn't going anywhere. And as I'm chatting to her, I could have sworn I saw a smile behind the bottle. Now, I know it wasn't a smile. No doubt it was wind. But for me, that was our first chat. So, back to the drop. Here I am at the petrol station, starting to look a little dodgy hanging around the side of the building and looking at my watch, and eventually Trina and Brett pull up alongside me and the precious cargo is on board, Annie Grace. I can't tell you, I am so excited. We're going to have our first girls' weekend sleepover, and I'm also really excited to give Trina and Brett a break. And so begins the exchange. This isn't just about Annie and all her gear that now has to get moved into my car. This is about, the list of do's and don'ts. Now, look, I fully respect new parents. Some will have extensive lists that could be like the Reader's Digest version of War and Peace. And others, the list isn't as long and they can be a little bit more relaxed about it. I have to say, Trina and Brett are pretty chill parents, even though they are sleep deprived. So if they're listening now, they know what end of the scale they're on. But eventually the drop was complete. We were finally homeward bound, just Annie and I, and with the writing instructions to bring her back in one piece. And if the instructions have been more, that's fine. I follow instructions. And in fact, by nature, I'm a rule follower. But you probably don't know that because we've just met. So look, here are a quick few things about me. I'm in my late 30s, I'm single, and I'm living in Sydney. I've got a great bunch of girlfriends and we have a fabulous social life. But there's two things in particular we love doing: travel and following the rugby union. Can be the national comp, it can be the international comp. And sure, when we travel, we stay at some nice hotels. Most of my girlfriends go and have great games of golf. I love finding the beach for a few hours. But I have to say, nothing quite beats going to Hong Kong for the rugby sevens. You sit in that south stand for 3 days, surrounded by people in costumes, cheering on for their country. And then of an evening, you eat at a restaurant in a dodgy street, which is fondly known by the locals and the expats as Rat Alley. Great food, dubious surroundings. I was living a happy and healthy life, but underneath it all, I was in search. I was in search of him, and I really hoped I would find him one day. Well, I got to tell you, this is kind of the second him because I'd been married once before. But that's a whole other podcast of 101 Reasons Why You Don't Get Married Young. Anyway, back to our sleepover story. Annie and I are heading homeward bound back to Sydney, 90-minute drive in the car. And I have to say, it was kind of lovely. And I was taking in the differences now with this trip. Suddenly my car had a baby capsule car seat. My swim bag had been replaced with a bag full of diapers and bottles. My music, which, was Motown, a little bit of 80s, and the occasional Neil Diamond, had now been replaced with improvisation of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. This was really special, and I glanced back and she is sound asleep. And I'm feeling really light and I'm savouring the minute and thinking, I'm a competent woman. I can do this. So yeah, okay, I'm probably not going to get a lot of sleep, but I've got this sorted. Until I pulled into my street, and then it dawned on me, the realisation of the monumental task that required patience, agility and poise that probably every parent and guardian dreads: the transfer. Moving a sleeping child from one location to another, or in my case, from the car to the apartment. Bloody hell, how was I going to do this? You see, I lived in a 2-story walk-up apartment. In fact, let's make it 3 stories because my car is parked underground. I had to stop and think, and I thought, this is like a military operation. I'm going to have to really think through the logistics of this. Now, before anybody says anything, I get it. You don't leave the kid in the car and take the bags up first. But even then I was thinking, well, if I take the kid up first, is she going to be okay? I knew I just had to take a deep breath. Got her out of the car. She's still sound asleep. Race up 3 flights of stairs and place her still in a capsule in the middle of the living room floor. Now, the rational me was thinking, she's perfectly safe. She's sound asleep. She's completely strapped into the capsule. She's months old. She's not years old. And she's not about to undo herself, heave herself out of the capsule and start walking around opening drawers looking for sharp knives. I knew the kid was safe. But, my family will probably tell you, there are moments where I will often think worst case scenario. So I had to say to myself, take a breath, Tanya. Just take a breath. She's going to be okay. So with one last glance, I raced back down 3 flights of stairs like Usain Bolt. I grabbed the bags out of the back seat and out of the trunk, boot, took one look at the pram, realised I didn't need that, closed the car, locked the car and raced back up 3 flights of stairs, puffing as I bust into the apartment and realised there she is, still sound asleep, perfectly still. She hadn't found the knives. So our sleepover was now in full swing. My Saturday night of enjoying Chardonnay had now been replaced with making up formula, feeding, bathing, and really enjoying those bedtime cuddles. It was absolutely perfect. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot to mention that I was going to have to kind of watch her sleep. My apartment wasn't baby ready. I didn't even have a cot. Now, Trina and Brett knew that. They were cool. She could sleep in the capsule or sleep on the floor. I could make up a bed. But I thought, no, who wants to sleep in a constrained capsule? I'll make up a bed on the floor. So my bedroom floor is sisal carpet. I thought, well, that's not the most comfortable flooring. So I'll lay down blankets. I'll lay down a duvet. And then I thought, well, I don't want it to bunch up. What if it bunched up near her mouth? What if she rolled around? God, this is going to be frightening if anything happens to her. So I laid on a sheet and then I sandbagged the edges to keep that sheet perfectly tight. I swear it was like building the castle walls to keep the city of Troy safe. The main instruction, just keep her alive, Tanya, just keep her alive. Now, I have to admit, I should have resigned to the fact that I wasn't going to sleep because during the night, if I heard the slightest noise, I'd fumble in the dark and I'd reach for her to make sure, A, she hadn't rolled onto her side, and B, that her chest was still going up and down. We survived the early morning feed and we survived the night. But I knew, first item on the list that week, had to buy a cot. I could not live in fear of this kid dying of asphyxiation from sisal carpet threads. So during the first sleepover, I'd phoned Trina because I figured she'd want to know how things are going, on how her daughter's going with her first sleepover with Aunty Tan. And I'd ring her and say, guess what, Trina? She just slept for 3 hours, drank a bottle, it was fantastic. Or, you're not going to believe this, Trina. She just burped, farted and sneezed at the same time. This kid's a triple threat. Now, I admit I phoned them a few times. And I swear to God, if I didn't have her kid, she would have eventually blocked my number. She eventually cracked it. She said to me, look, you've taken her for 2 reasons. 1, so that you have time with her, and 2, so we get a break from her. I know Annie's drinking habits and bowel movements. I don't need the blow-by-blow description. Now, all right, look, I get it. I probably phoned her a few too many times, but I was a little miffed. I mean, I had precious cargo, and naturally I wanted to keep her safe. But I kind of thought it'd be nice to get some recognition for what I was achieving. She was sleeping according to schedule. She was eating all the puree. And I thought, this is what new parents must feel like every day when they hit these new milestones. You know, looking around to high five somebody, and maybe there is somebody to high five. For me, I was left just hanging there. So we survived our first night. She was well rested. Aunty Tan desperately needed a coffee. We're hitting the streets. We're going to go for a walk in Surrey Hills and we're going to grab a great coffee. Oh, that means I'm going to need the pram. Okay, quick note. You probably just heard a beep. Yep, even aunties have to be censored. Righto, back down those 3 flights of stairs. So bag over one arm, kid tucked under the other, race down the stairs to the car to get the pram out. And then again, it's a military operation. What am I going to do with the kid? Well, I'm trying to get the pram out of the boot or the trunk and try to assemble it. I can't just lay her on the concrete floor in a dark garage. So I opened the back seat. I madly wrapped the seatbelt around her and clicked her in and kept the door open. I'm chatting away so she doesn't feel like she's being totally abandoned in a dark garage. I get the pram out. Think, Tanya, think. Come on, Brett only gave me instructions 24 hours ago how to assemble this pram. I mean, I was pulling at it. I was kicking things down. There were pedals I thought I had to click up with my foot while I'm pulling on the handles. And every now and then I'd glance around in the garage, hoping somebody by sheer coincidence would walk down going, hey, I know that model of pram. Let me give you a hand in putting that together. Fat chance. Eventually, one last shove and it clicked into place. Unstrapped the kid from the back seat in the pram and we are now off. There's something about pushing a pram down the street. It's a bit like walking down the street with a puppy. Some people will glance as they walk past you. Others will stop and have a look. And then some even press in for a conversation. And for those that did, they would compliment on, look how gorgeous she is, what beautiful eyes she has. And I would say, thank you. And then it dawned on me, I'm starting to receive all these compliments. I didn't make the kid. This was Trina and Brett. I had no right to take these compliments. So then I started to think about it and I start responding with, she's not mine, but thank you. And this would become a common phrase in my years as Aunty Tan. She's not mine. He's not mine. They're not mine. But I love them as if they were. So our first sleepover was a success and it became a new norm and I was all in. I bought a $200 cot. Now, I didn't know what to look for except that I knew I had to be able to easily store it in an apartment, had to be easy to assemble and disassemble, and naturally needed to be robust and go the distance. Man, like that pram, this cot at times was really hard to disassemble. Pulling up base and pushing down on the rails. It was like a mission for Tom Cruise. There'd be days after Annie had gone home and I hadn't been able to disassemble the cot, and it stood there, empty in the second bedroom. And there'd be moments I'd walk past that room and it would catch my eye, an empty cot, and it would remind me of what I didn't have. I'm going to cry, sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, I'm good. I'm good. Sorry. Ah, oh, I want the nose with it. Oh. Whew. One of the loves and lights of my life was my grandmother, Noni. She was my maternal grandmother. And I would share these moments with her. I mean, I'd have lunch with her. It was usually fresh white bread sandwiches and a lovely hot cup of tea made in a teapot with loose tea leaves, milk always in first. And I'd share the highs and I'd share the hysterics and the problems I got into looking after Annie. And I'd also share those moments of quiet tears. We shared a lot of loves. We loved a cold beer at the end of the day. We loved Malaysian food, and she had the most wicked sense of humour. And at one stage, we shared a house. Yep, we were even flatmates. But that's the story for next time. I hope you join me for episode 3 of They're Not Mine.